Hello and welcome to 2021. Welcome to the first edition of Beyond the Headlines. I'm your presenter, Odette Campbell. This evening, we will be discussing an issue that has been talked about in the news for the last week and a half, the repurchase of the GRENLEC shares. This evening, our panelists are Ms. Cassandra Mitchell, she's a civil society representative. Mr. Cajeton Hood, he is the former Attorney General of Grenada, he's an attorney. And Mr. Vincent Roberts, he's a former executive member of the National Democratic Congress. Mr. Roberts, as you would recall, if you looked at the news last week, he was one of 3 people staging a protest outside the ministerial complex, the Botanic Gardens at Tantine in St. George. And we also have, as I mentioned, attorney Mr. Cajeton Hood, he's a former Attorney General, and Ms. Cassandra Mitchell, she's a civil society representative. Lady and gentlemen, Happy New Year and welcome to the first edition of Beyond the Headlines.
Happy New Year, Odette. Thank you so very much, and Happy New Year's to your listening audience.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pleased to be able to make a contribution.
All right.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to all your listeners. Nice to be here.
Great. Mr. Roberts, I'm starting with you because last week, as mentioned, you were one of 3 people who was gathered outside the ministerial complex calling for answers, because the week prior there had been reports that the government had closed the deal with WRB, but there was no information. So you were asking those questions. You have had some answers. The government issued a statement. There was a press conference. And have your questions been answered?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Odette, and good evening once again. Yes, you are correct. On Monday and Tuesday of last week, I did participate in a protest demanding that the government give answers, because just about a day or 2 before New Year's Day, I received information that a deal was imminent. We immediately issued a statement, that's the National Democratic Congress, advising the people that the information was credible and we were demanding that the government come clean with the population, with the citizenry. Eventually they did. That's after WRB had issued 2 releases. And I am totally dissatisfied with the level of, I can't even say transparency. The information is not honest. It is not factual. It is misleading. And that's the situation as it is. Okay,
so let me just stay with you while you have made those comments. You said the information is dishonest, it's not factual, and it's misleading. What is dishonest about it? And if we could just have a synopsis and we can dwell deeper as we move along, because I want to get the other 2 panelists in. Yeah. What is dishonest about it in a nutshell?
Right. Well, Odette, before I go into what is dishonest about it, I would really like to know what is the objective of this program. Because and there's spin. And if the GBN or any organization wants to present the facts, I think an investigation can be done. There are sufficient documents, factual documents, like the results of the arbitration, like the World Report, which is a critical part in understanding the GRENLEC issue. We have the Hansard from Parliament, the agreements, the contracts signed with WRB, the acts. These are factual documents, and the government can come and try to spin it as much as possible. The facts will always remain the facts. And I would like to see them put it up on the big screen, share it on the small screen as well, the social media. Get a credible, independent body, because any information I give, the people who drink the green Kool-Aid will say it is not factual. When they spin, they will say something else. Get the facts. Get the Bar Association, the Media Association, get if there's a body dealing with the accounting, present the facts in a magazine program. I wouldn't be arguing the facts, because the people who drink green Kool-Aid will say it is spin.
Vincent, Mr. Roberts, sir. I want to move on to the other two panelists. Let me back up a little bit. Let me say to our viewers and listeners that tonight we had invited the government of Grenada to be represented on tonight's program. They declined the invitation. Mr. Roberts, you can't just come on the program and make wild statements without backing them up. Legally, the GBN has to be careful with the utterances that it allows on its various stations. So I asked you in a synopsis, you said that the information provided by the government, it is misleading, it is not factual, and it is dishonest. So I asked you if you can, in short order, what is dishonest and what is not factual. And I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay.
Instead, you move on to talk about if the GBN wants to whatever, which is why we have you on the panel tonight.
Yes. And I will ask Mr. Cajeton Hood, who is very familiar with the facts, very familiar. He's more familiar than I am. So I will, please invite him. He can present the facts. We have discussed it. I know he's very much on top of the facts.
But you see, Mr. Roberts, with all due respect, and this is where I always get in trouble, but Leslie Pear will not think, he would think this is good trouble. You did not invite Mr. Hood on the program, and as such, if you are making, if Mr. Hood is your attorney and you tell me you're speaking through him, then that's a totally different matter.
All right. First of all, I will give you one bit of fact. The sale of GRENLEC was carried out by the NNP administration. The initial deal, it was started, an election was imminent, the election took place. Prime Minister Braffett said that he will not enact the legislation, he will leave it for whoever wins the election. It was taken to Parliament by the NNP. They approved the renegotiation. They were unable to get a better deal. They subsequently enacted the legislation, made the sale law, and all of this information is available in the result. These are facts. So when they're spinning and saying the NDC made a bad deal. Secondly, the NDC, in negotiating with or for the sale, Tillman Thomas at the time, Joan Purcell, advised by Mr. Cox, a Barbadian who was working, he was being paid by the World Bank or one of these, and by PricewaterhouseCoopers. There are documents showing that the evaluation of the bids was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, that the recommendations were made, and it was at arm's length, it was in the sunshine, it was transparent, it was brought to the Parliament, it was debated, and everything was in the light, not as obscure and as dark as this deal was, which up to now, people are asking, where did the money come from? They told us in one release that they paid 63 million, and then on Sunday, on another program, we heard that it is 60 million plus 3 million over the next 2 years. The government has not been consistent. We are asking to put the information up, as we say on the big screen. Let the people see the information.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Roberts, for that. So even if, and let me make it abundantly clear, I'm no defender of government. I'm no supporter of government. I'm no supporter of opposition. I'm no defender of opposition. I'm just trying as a journalist to try to dissect facts, because you're saying that he said 63 million on whichever day, probably Wednesday or Thursday, and then on a program on Sunday they said 60 million plus 3. 60 plus 3 will always be 63 regardless of the means or methods, or if you have installment payments, it would always be 63. So I just want to be certain that we have that out in the open. And so you said that the government has not been transparent and it entered into a dark of night, I may not have quoted you correctly, agreement. Again, let me just put on my journalistic hat. WRB made it clear in their statement, or probably, maybe they didn't make it clear in their statement, but I know when we at the GBN had contacted WRB for statement on this in the early stages, they said, they alluded to the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, which barred them from commenting, and the government alluded to that as well. So we have established that. Cassandra, I'll go to the attorney in a little bit. I see him sitting there. It's like, why Odette not coming to me? But it's all right, Mr. Hood.
No.
Keep your powder dry.
I am very patient.
Right,
I'm
keep your
listening.
powder dry. Cassandra, you have followed this, and as a representative of the people, what is brewing? What's in your percolator?
Good night again, Odette, and good night to your viewing and listening audiences. As a representative of the people, when we are aware of the ruling by the tribunal, one of the things that stands out for us is the fact that over the last 8 or 9 months, our government has said that there has been almost a 50% drop in revenue collection, understandably so. And now, Christmas Eve, we get a release almost in the middle of the night stating that the ruling, the government was able to fulfill the judgment from the tribunal in the amount of $63 million. Foremost in our mind is the question, where did the money come from? This morning, the Prime Minister on another platform reassured the public that the money used to settle the judgment from ICSID came from the 2019-2020 estimates of revenue and expenditure. If you'll just indulge me here for a minute or two, the budget for 2020 was estimated to be $1,146,010,705. Of that amount, you had recurrent revenue, $786.2 million. You had recurrent expenditure, $859 million. Capital expenditure, $225.3 million, current account surplus, $152.5 million, primary surplus after grants, $212.8 million, principal repayments, $287 million, and an overall surplus of $145.8 million. According to our government representatives, the money used to settle the judgment came from the capital expenditure component 2019-2020 budget. If one does the math, and I'm not a mathematician here, but I was able to do some math, of that $225.3 million, $170 million, according to our government, was spent. According to the Prime Minister this morning, that was able to happen because of the COVID pandemic, where a lot of the capital projects were not implemented for whatever reasons. Okay. But when you do the math again, so you take away 170 from 225.3, you're left with a balance of about what, $55.7 million. Not much of a moving around room, right? That's the concern that we have. And again, if one understands how a budget is done, it's an estimate of revenue and expenditure. So what we did is that we went back to the review of the fiscal summary 2020 of the capital expenditure, which was estimated to be $225.3 million. Only $112.1 million was part of the actual provisional for 2020. The question we're asking, and we're looking, that's the figures that our government has presented to us. Given the significant shortfall in the capital grant inflow presented by the 2020 fiscal summary, where was there room for moving around and reallocation of the capital expenditure? And that is the question that we're asking. And if you did move that money with only a balance of approximately 55 million remaining, what capital projects have been affected? The government has not been very straightforward. The fact presented to us doesn't seem to be adding up. And that is the question that the people are asking. And that is our concern. And it's really unfortunate that we couldn't have the government representative on the panel here to kind of provide some clarity for us that we can understand exactly what happened. There seems to be some lack of transparency, and that is for us the utmost concern.
All right, let me just ask Cassandra if for any stretch of the imagination, probably that there's no mixing of EC and US probably in the calculations that you did. Just checking.
No, okay. No mixing of EC and US.
Just wondering, because we know that we're dealing with $63 million, which, if you do the math, is about 202 million thereabouts EC dollars. So, Mr. Hood, you've been very patient, and let me thank you sincerely for keeping your powder dry, holding your horses. It's now your turn.
If you multiply 63 by 2.7, you will get exactly $170.1 million. So Cassandra is correct mathematically.
Mathematically, right.
You won't get $200 million.
Oh, you won't?
No, you will not.
Corrected.
Well, as a matter of, you know I have a degree in maths, actually. I taught mathematics.
I should have remembered.
Right. So Cassandra is correct. It's 170. Based on the 63 figure, it's $170.1 million.
If you look at the original figure, it will come up to the 202. But they said that there was some savings there. They were negotiating down.
So the 202 may come up.
Okay, great. All right. So, Mr. Hood, you have been sitting and you have followed this. You have made several pronouncements on this through articles and so in the past. And you have cut and dissect all of this. And in 30 seconds, your summary of this, before we go into the details, give me the headlines give me your summation of this whole matter. Let's now hear the summation of the whole matter. And then we'll delve into all the little details.
Right, I will tell you my summation. First of all, part of what Vincent said, I accept, in that when the NNP government came into power in 1995, Minister Bowen made a statement to the effect that they were not going to honor, that the NNP administration was not going to honor the share purchase agreement, even though it was a part of the laws of Grenada. Based on that, WRB went to ICSID. And at the end of the ICSID negotiations, because there was not a judgment, the government of Grenada agreed and accepted that the 1994 Electricity Supply Act was indeed good law. Furthermore, there was a supplemental share purchase agreement negotiated. So it is unfair for the NNP government to try to blame the NDC, because at that point in time, WRB went to ICSID asking to be paid $50.49 million for the 50% shares that they had. And they were entitled to $50.4 million in 1995. When the negotiations finished in 1998, we ended up with a supplemental share purchase agreement and with a confirmation that our electricity supply act was good law.
So, Mr. Hood, if I could ask you to just, let's see if we could pause a little bit and do this in bite-sized pieces. I remember one of the arguments government officials have made is the fact that how dare you, and I know there's the issue of fair value, there's the issue of market value, but the government is saying after you paid next to nothing for it 1 year prior, how can you then move from probably 15 to 50 million? Isn't that a fair argument?
I will answer that in one sentence. If you buy an old car that's not working properly, and you change the engine and you paint it, and on the inside you fix it up, what stops you, if you bought it for $5, what stopped you from selling it for $15?
Okay.
You have to go back to 1994 to look at the state of GRENLEC. The engines were not working. You had blackouts. You had all kinds of disaster. That's the point. And as Vincent said, all these matters are subject to a report. It's not speculation here. It's a fact. GRENLEC was run down and worth $30 million. That's what it was worth, objectively. It was assessed by PricewaterhouseCoopers. It was not something which NDC did. And as a matter of fact, in 1995, the same NNP government had a commission of inquiry. Millions of dollars were spent on a commission of inquiry, which came back with a fact finding that nothing was wrong with the sale. GRENLEC was worth $30 million. And therefore, WRB paid $15 million for half of the shares. So what's bad about it?
Okay, great. So
over the years, the company appreciated because hotels are built, more people get electricity. So it means that the volume of transaction increases. And that's a fact. And plus, there's capital put into the company has grown. So that's a nonsense argument. And when you want me to, let me give you that piece to digest. I will answer every one of your questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Hood. Because
right,
you
fine.
mentioned the report,
So,
which I would want to refer to, but I just want to be certain that the producer has it lined up because, like Mr. Roberts would like journalists to do, I try to do my homework, so I did my homework coming into the class tonight. But we'll get to that once I'm certain that the producer can assist us with that. But go ahead, Mr. Hood.
Odette, I'll assist you with anything you want. And we can talk this talk every single day of the week. And my facts are on my fingertips.
Okay, so let me just try to go to slide 1 of the PowerPoint, and I suppose you're looking at something called the World Report. So the Tribunal Award, Mr. Roberts, you'll be pleased to know that I did do my homework and I have the numbers there. And we could get back to the Tribunal Award in terms of the numbers because I know probably Mr. Hood have them at his fingertips. Let's go forward a little bit to get to some of the other matters contained in the report. Slide 3 maybe. And it was dealing particularly with the condition of GRENLEC when a commission of inquiry was launched into various aspects of its operation. And I hear you alluding to one aspect of it, that the company was run down. And there is one aspect of the report which was published in that World Report. Let's see if we can have that slide, the World Report.
That's in 95?
Yeah. All right, so we'll get back to the report. In the meantime, you wanted to make the point, Mr. Hood, that the company was run down, GRENLEC made investments, and so they were entitled to what they claimed.
No, there's an additional point, I'm saying the company would have grown past the 30 million valuation, right? So the valuation would have appreciated over the, how many years? Is it 20, 25 years? You expect that, of course, Odette, because once the amount of users increase, more capital, the company would have grown, and that must be accepted. So that's one point. The other point, though, is this. Based on our laws, based on the Share Purchase Agreement, based on our Electricity Supplies Act, the company's investment is protected in the event of a repurchase event. The government of Grenada, prior to 2016, was advised legally that if the Electricity Supplies Act was changed as they proposed to do in 2016, that would constitute a repurchase event. And I'm not guessing that, that's a fact. So our government knew that a passage of the 2016 Act in Parliament was likely to be deemed by ICSID to be a repurchase event and would trigger what they call a penalty, but which ICSID said is proper and is according to the agreement.
But so,
and remember,
Mr. Wood,
in 1995, this NNP government confirmed that the ESA and the SPA were valid. This was not a judgment by ICSID. It was a settled mediation between the NNP government in 1995 and WRB. They confirmed that the ESA and the SPA were valid. Bowen said they were not valid. WRB went to ICSID, and when they presented the case to ICSID, the government backed off and they came up with a consensual agreement between the parties. So you can't resile from that now.
But do you think that the changes were made to the laws? Do you think it was done deliberately so that the end result we see today would have manifested itself?
Well, I would put it this way. If you are a responsible government and you're advised that if you make the change, it is likely to result in a certain end, and you still make the change, what is your excuse?
Some have wondered.
I'm not going to put an answer. Odette, I'm asking you, what is your excuse? When you advised before that it's a repurchase event. You can't say you didn't know.
I had nothing to do with the GRENLEC sale, sir. Absolutely nothing, except report on the developments.
And I am saying, if you are holding the purse strings of our country, right? And you are saying, I am going to pass a law, and you're advised that if you pass that law, it's like a parent telling a child, don't walk outside barefoot. A piece of bottle will cut you. And you walk outside barefoot. How could you say it's a mistake you made? You deliberately walked outside barefoot.
Okay, so Mr. Hood, let me ask you a question.
That World Bank is the one who suggested whatever it is. They had the power of their sovereignty to say to World Bank, we are not doing it. It's the same World Bank who advised the NDC in '94 to privatize GRENLEC because it was being run down and there were outages and all these things. So let's be consistent.
So there has been chatter in the public domain about the very testy relationship between WRB and the government of Grenada for as long as it lived, the 26 years that it lasted in Grenada. And some people have alluded to a vendetta on the part of senior people, let's say people, so that I don't get a lawsuit at the doors at the GBM when I enter tomorrow.
I'll defend you. They can't succeed.
No, that's too long an audio. Our process takes away from productive time.
Look, the truth is an absolute defense of defamation.
So do you concur with that school of thought, Mr. Hood?
Well, I would say reasonable people, when they look at all the facts, and I have much more facts to present to you, when they look at all the facts, will come to an inevitable conclusion. Because it defies common sense. Odette, do you know that in 2013, GRENLEC offered, GRENLEC offered, I was a part of the negotiation, to sell their shares at $8.27 per share. The government countered with 5.47 per share. We went to Miami to negotiate. The government invited, not the government, sorry, WRB invited the government to better the offer. And they refused. Do you know how much the award is for per share now? Over $17 million per share. Over $17.5 per share. That is what ICSID is saying to the government, you have to pay GRENLEC. Approximately twice what GRENLEC offered to sell the shares for. And WRB was willing to come down from the 8.27.
Well, the energy minister, the finance minister will tell you we were able to negotiate downwards, because if you notice how the press statement...
No, I'm going to answer that just now, Odette. I'm going to answer that. That's a lie. That's not true.
How is that a lie?
That's not true.
Okay, Mr. Hood, let me ask us, please, to take a commercial break, because this is warming up. This is getting very warm. Let's take a commercial break and come right back. This is Beyond the Headlines. This evening, we're looking at the GRENLEC repurchase agreement, which was closed off last week between WRB and the government of Grenada. We'll be back with more discussions on that.
Food is fundamental. And at Caribbean Agro Industries Limited, we source premium quality wheat and other ingredients, so you get the best results in the kitchen, bakeries and farms. For over 35 years, we've supplied Grenada with the finest flour and animal feed. The tastiest cakes, pastries or breads are baked with the region's finest flour. Buy the products you've trusted for all these years. Baker's Pride, Supreme and Sunshine Flour. Get the best from your farm animals with our master mixed feed brands. Support local. Buy products that are made in Grenada. Call us on 440-2954 or visit us at Mount Gay St. George or check our Facebook page. Caribbean Agro Industries Limited, a subsidiary of ADM. Unlocking nature, enriching life.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
These have been tough times, and we could all use a helping hand to get through this period. GUT Credit Union gives you the opportunity to do just that without a worry. What are you looking forward to? A relaxing staycation? Brand new appliances or devices? Consolidating your debt to get more money in your pocket? Not a member? No worries. Come in and find out how you too can make the most of this offer. Or visit us today. Yes, you can have a brighter Christmas season with GUT Credit Union. GUT Credit Union. It's where you belong.
Peace of mind comes from knowing that your family is safe and financially secure. For your peace of mind and theirs, plan ahead. Beacon's Rest Easy policy helps you to do just that. Rest Easy is a policy that offers you a payment upon your death or the death of any covered family member that can be used to offset post-mortem expenses. For as little as 75 cents per day, you can ensure that your expenses are covered. Call Beacon at 440-4447 and sign up for the Rest Easy plan today.
Are you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements? Or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 for 18-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Fallage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening, we're looking at the GRENLEC repurchase agreement, which was closed off last week between WRB Enterprises, based in Miami, Florida, and the government of Grenada. And this evening, our panelists are Mr. Cajeton, who is an attorney. He's a former Attorney General of Grenada. Ms. Cassandra Mitchell, she's a civil society representative. And Mr. Vincent Roberts, he's a former executive member of the National Democratic Congress. Mr. Roberts, if I could come back to you for a minute. The government, in its press statement and various utterances, have laid a lot of the blame at the hands of the NDC for having given away state resources. And I'm using that word liberally. They didn't use that word, but I'm using it liberally. Because the Prime Minister said that having gotten the shares back into the state hands is the best thing that has ever happened. What is your thinking on the blame being laid at the feet of the NDC for having sold the company in the first place? All right, Mr. Roberts, you need to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Odette. First of all, the blame game is politics. I like to deal with the facts. The Royal Commission report states that GRENLEC was run down. They had invested in bad engines, or bad investments were made. The company was mismanaged, and it was recommended to be sold. The government at the time was going through a structural adjustment program. The World Bank advised that it be sold. But if we had to speak about giving away state resources, we would have to go to A.J. Miller, we would have to go to the fowl farm, and these are things that are also factual. So when we're speaking about mismanagement and giving away of state resources, then we lay it at the feet of the NNP.
All right. Cassandra, as a citizen of Grenada, you have assessed this whole deal, 26 years of wrangling between two parties, the state and an entity that was one state owner and then purchased by this company. And as a citizen, how does this sit with you?
So I don't want to give my opinion, just like the rest of my colleagues here. I like to stick with the facts. And the facts are just as it says. There are allegations made by the government of Grenada about misappropriation by the company. They claim that the company wasn't properly run or managed. There were issues and allegations about equipment and the company not plowing enough of its profit back into capital assets of GRENLEC. But one of the things, just before I delve into, I haven't heard in all of these discussions over the last few days much discussion about the constitutional claim that GRENLEC had against the government of Grenada. There was some amendments made in December 2017 to the 2016 ESA, mandating that GRENLEC pay 5% of its pre-tax profit to the government to be devoted to whatever purpose a government committee decide. And I'm mentioning this because on another platform just yesterday, we heard Minister Joseph, and I pay particular attention to these ramblings, if I may, mention about the profits and how much profits that the company was making. It's a private company. And of course, with most private companies, one of the objectives is to make profit. But I'm tying that into that 2017 amendment where the government, and that was something that I remember they had back and forth with, where the government was mandating GRENLEC to pay the 5% of its pre-tax profits into this fund that government will use for whatever purpose that they decide. And the question that we are asking as members of civil society and as a citizen, could this be one of the motives behind the acquisition, if I may, of the shares of WRB/GRENLEC? That's something too that concerns us and should concern us as Grenadians. One of the things that I've heard is that GRENLEC has not been investing. That is not true. If you look at GRENLEC's is it GCPI project or initiative, the fund, where that same 5% was being invested into community projects, education projects, heritage projects, sports, education, youth, I would believe that over the last few years, GRENLEC has invested almost $23 million back into the community. Whether or not they should have invested more is left to be questioned. But I think there is a narrative being said by the government that GRENLEC was not being a good corporate citizen. If one takes a look at GRENLEC employees, GRENLEC is known to be one of the best paying companies in Grenada. The employees are unionized, which comes, of course, with additional benefits. If you look at the healthcare, the insurance, if you look at all of the other issues around the employees, I think that GRENLEC has been a very good corporate citizen compared to some of the other investors that our government has bring in, where they're saying blatantly that they don't want their workers, our Grenadian citizens, our fellow Grenadian citizens not to be unionized. GRENLEC has allowed their employees to be unionized. They have allowed the employees to benefit from great health and insurance packages. And this is something that we, as a grouping of civil society organizations, we don't see with some of the other investors that have come into Grenada. And that is a known fact. So these are some of the concerns that sit and that we are very uncomfortable with. And what is the real objective behind the acquisition of WRB? One of the things that Mr. Hood mentioned was the deliberate, if I may, act of the government to go ahead and trigger the repurchase event, knowing that when they made the amendments to the ESA, that the amendments could be interpreted by ICSID as a repurchase event. They went ahead and they made the amendments to the ESA. They deliberately went and do that. And again, when you hear these facts, not assumptions, not they say, it begs and it leaves so many questions and answers as to what are the real motives behind the government of Grenada. And then you see two key players here. You see Prime Minister Mitchell, and you see Prime Minister Bowen. Minister Bowen, who played a key role in destroying the company years ago. I heard the Prime Minister on another platform this morning boasting, if I may, that GRENLEC played a key role in him becoming a frontline politician. So when I heard that statement, one of the things that came to me was GRENLEC played a role in you becoming a frontline politician. It may now play a role in defining your legacy as a politician. Because there's so many questions. I heard government representatives throwing around renewable energies. If you look at the award document from the tribunal, both parties, both GRENLEC, WRB, and the government of Grenada did not show much interest in renewables prior to them bringing this case before the court. There was not much vigor, and that was the word used by the tribunal, about renewable energies. Why now? And I'm listening to Minister Joseph and Minister Bowen, and they seem to be throwing out renewable energy as a panacea for solving all of our electricity issues. But then, if one looks at the facts again, and you compare the electricity rates in Grenada to that of other Caribbean countries, it seems to be consistent. And that again was outlined in the document. So when I look at the facts and I look at what the government is presenting, there seems to be a big gap in what truly are the objectives of the government of Grenada. And that should concern us, not just civil society, but us as Grenadians. And one of the things that I want to advise my colleagues who are on different political fences, let us not use the political knife to divide the people when we're discussing this, having this discussion around electricity and WRB and GRENLEC. And this is a national asset. This belongs to us, the people, and we should not put any politics, partisan politics, into the discussion. I've seen it both from the government side and I've seen it from other representatives. This is a national issue, and I want us to address it as such. And I'm begging, not only as a representative of civil society, but as a citizen, as a young citizen. This is my future, the future of my children, and of my children's children. And we don't seem to be getting answers. The government doesn't seem to be transparent in discussing this issue. Because like Mr. Roberts said earlier, at one point we heard $63 million, and there was the perception that there was a one-off payment of $63 million. But yesterday we heard Minister Joseph stating that it was a payment of $60 million with a balance owing of $3 million. So exactly what is the truth? And I hope that the government representatives listening in will understand where the confusion is coming, and we are left to just assume, make assumptions without fact. And one of the things that concern me, can someone point me in the direction of where and how is it possible that the interest of the people, the people's business, that what gave the authority to the cabinet to sign a non-disclosure agreement as it relates to the people's business? So if someone can point me to some part of the Constitution or some law that says that the people we elect to manage our affairs and our resources can take the authority upon themselves to sign a non-disclosure agreement and bold-facedly come to us, the people, and say, it is none of your business, I cannot tell you.
All right. Well ventilated there. And I'd want to do a follow, but I'm looking at the clock and I realize that we're short on time because we must take a commercial break. We have a commitment that we must meet around this time every night. Although we're 2 minutes shy, I think one of the useful thing would be to take a commercial break and come back because we'll be able to swing freely after that. So let's take a commercial break. This is Beyond the Headlines. The GRENLEC debate continues right after this break. Stay with us.
With just $2, you can gift yourself with a chance to win the Lotto jackpot. Now, imagine winning the National Lotteries Authority jackpot of $40,000. Why pass upon this winning opportunity? Lotto, play and win a lot of money.
Well, good evening, viewers and listeners. Welcome back. It's time for the National Lottery Authority's Lottotron number 3159 for this evening, Monday, the 4th of January, 2021. The estimated jackpot for this evening is $40,000. And of course, joining me once again is Ms. Josephine Clark. She's representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Let's find out what the free ticket letter will be for this evening. Good luck. All right, check your tickets. The free ticket letter is... This evening's free ticket letter is the letter D as in dog. That's D as in dog. And it's time to find out, of course, to reveal what the 5 winning numbers will be for $40,000. Best of luck. All right, it's time to check your tickets. First number. First number up is 10. Second. Second number, 9. Third. Third number is 23. The fourth. Fourth number is 17. And the fifth. Yes. Fifth and final is 32. All right, so let's do a quick recap. Free ticket letter was D as in dog. That's D as in dog. And the 5 winning numbers, let's recap. First number up was 10. That's 1010. The second number, 9099. Third number, 23. That's 2323. The fourth was 1717. And the fifth and final, 32. That's 3232 for $40,000. If you have these numbers, congratulations to you. This has been Lotto Play and Win a Lot. Have a great evening, and don't forget to get your tickets for tomorrow, and do continue to support sports, culture, and nation building. Have a good night.
I'm a winner, you are winner, we are winners, winners, winners.
It's the
big one. Grenada, imagine winning $25,000 and up to 6 times by scratching just one little ticket. Get your triple cash scratch tickets for a chance to live your best life. Win easy with Scratch. For just $3, match any of your numbers to any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown for that number. Reveal a money back symbol and win the prize instantly. Triple cash scratch in stores now. Must be 18 or older to play.
'Cause I'm a winner. From the moment that I get up, I'm feeling right.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. We continue in the GRENLEC debate emanating out of the repurchase event that was closed last week. Our panelists this evening, Mr. Cajeton Hood, he's an attorney at law. He's a former Attorney General of Grenada. Ms. Cassandra Mitchell, she's a civil society activist. And Mr. Vincent Ramos, he's a former member, executive member of the National Democratic Congress. He was one of 3 people outside the ministerial complex last Monday and Tuesday demanding answers regarding the sale of GRENLEC. Mr. Hood, there's a posit here on social media for you. The NDC sold GRENLEC and in the negotiation agreed to this repurchase clause. How can a responsible government agree to such a clause in a sale agreement? Is Mr. Hood saying to us that we should pass the new Electricity Act? The genesis of the new act is in keeping with our commitments toward the SDG. By the way, WRB is a foreign company. GRENLEC is owned by foreigners, not locals. What's your response to this, Mr. Hood?
I am puzzled by the question because if you go back historically to the issues raised, it is beyond debate that the same World Bank who offered the help in the drafting of the new legislation advised that the company be sold. When you look at the judgment, I know it's about 100 and something pages long. The allegation that this was an unusual clause was dealt with at the exit, and exit found that the Electricity Supply Order of 1960 and the Electricity Supplies Act of 1994 were very, very similar. So that speculation has been debunked by the exit negotiators. So I don't need to answer that. All I'm inviting whoever is asking the question, please go to the exit judgment and you'll read all of those answers. You'll read it there. So this allegation, you're trying to relitigate the same point. And let me go further. The issue about how GRENLEC was run by, in whatever way, that was dealt with in the exit arbitration also. Wow. So we have not to go back there. The government raised those issues and the arbitrators dealt with it and dismissed it. And I want to help my young sister friend there. The 5% imposition by the government has been challenged by GRENLEC. And it's quite likely that this repurchase was one of the reasons for the repurchase was to stifle that. Because all you do now, WRB is out of the way, you go to the board and you withdraw the case and you settle it, however you settle it. A further point of clarification, it is not true. And if Minister Joseph says to the public that there was no reference to renewables, Minister Joseph, you know that you're not talking the truth. That's a lie. The government of the United States engaged this government of Grenada and WRB into negotiations. Mr. Joseph was in Washington. We had a long meeting in Washington with WRB and GRENLEC. We came back to Grenada to finalize the negotiation. And if you read the judgment, WRB and GRENLEC are saying that the government did not take their suggestions about renewable development seriously at all. They rejected the solar energy farm. They refused to provide land for the solar farm. So the government cannot come back now and say that WRB GRENLEC was not interested in renewables. That's a lie. That's not true. And Minister Boy knows that. Minister Joseph knows that. The Prime Minister knows that. That is not the truth. So it's not correct at all, Cassandra, and whoever else is concerned, to say that WRB GRENLEC was not interested in renewables. That is not true. It's far from the truth. And the non-disclosure agreement, I'll give you the answer. I'll answer you from the words of Minister Gregory Bowen. He said in 1995, when he was rejecting the ESA, he said, listen to his words, the government is not going to respect the SPA because it's not a matter of choice. It has always been the clear position of this administration, the NNP, that the agreement is neither legally nor morally binding on the government of Grenada because the Prime Minister who signed the agreement or the instrument of ratification had no authority from Parliament to sign it. So, Cassandra, there was no legal authority to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So that's absolute nonsense. So if they come back to the people and say, we have an NDA, who authorized you to sign the NDA? And that's Minister Bowen's words. His words. I'm using his words.
And you're
so
using
no
his words in relation to a non-disclosure agreement at the time or the non-disclosure agreement for the repurchase event. Which one are you referencing here?
I am saying Minister Bowen made a statement regarding the commitment of government based on the absence of parliamentary approval. That's the answer I'm giving to Cassandra. There was no parliamentary approval to sign an NDA regarding the people's business.
And that was when?
That's the answer.
In 1995?
No, I'm talking about now. The NDA that they're hiding behind was not to give the people the answers they're asking for. In other words, the government signed that NDA with WRB and they had no authority to sign it.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the point.
All right. Another question that has come up here on the social media feed relates to a loan that was taken to pay dividends. What is that about?
Well, and that was dealt with also in the arbitration. The arbitration dismissed that wrongly. Say they are able to do it. You can't challenge that.
But you haven't you put the people,
based on the financial health of the company.
Haven't you put the people of Grenada
one company may decide not to do it, another company may decide to do it. They did it, and that's it. They could have covered it. It from because what the government is saying is that they shouldn't do it, but you can't tie their hands. You can't.
Is that like Donald Trump saying that he can find loopholes through which he should not pay his taxes?
No, that's not a loophole issue. It's a company issue, and it's a company issue. In other words, you want to pay dividend. Yes, you may say, well, you have a greater percentage of shares, so you'll get more money in terms of the dividends, but that's immaterial. The management of the company decides we're going to pay dividends. Yes, we have enough capital. We have enough other assets that we can hold against the loan, and the commercial bank accept what is proposed to them. That's the point.
Somebody is saying, I don't understand that we buy over WRB shares and now looking for some foreign persons or companies to run the same thing we just buy away. So we're taking a shoe from one foot and put it on the other. Vincent, what is your thought on the government saying in its press statement?
The Minister Bowen has warned us, get ready for blackout. So we're going back to pre-1994. Right. He said it.
In
Vincent,
addition,
the government has said in its statement that it has approached the World Bank to get expertise to run the company. So this, the comment here is dealing with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, clearly, Odette, we have a situation where we had WRB managing GRENLEC. They had a management contract. They were doing a wonderful job, in my opinion, but the thing is that the government now has the controlling interest. And what I am concerned about is the effect of this takeover of GRENLEC. It means that with government owning the majority shares, the board of directors will be directed by their boss, who is cabinet. Are we satisfied with the cabinet running GRENLEC? Because regardless of who the directors are and who the management company is, the owners of the majority shares is the government of Grenada, and they are represented by cabinet. So when cabinet say how they want to see the profits, whether it's a 5% or more spent, it is cabinet decisions. And I'm asking the people of Grenada, are you satisfied with cabinet running GRENLEC? Secondly, they're talking about divestment. Will cabinet be presenting a policy framework for the divestment of the shares to the people of Grenada? And when they speak of the shares will be offered to Grenadians, my question is, are the Grenadians who are holding citizenship through the CBI, these high net worth individuals, are they the ones who will, in one fell swoop, buy the majority of shares? Will their policy document saying how you plan to divest say that ordinary Grenadians whose neighbors string berry here gonna have a preference? Or will one high net worth individual carrying a CBI passport, who is, according to law, a Grenadian, be able to purchase all of GRENLEC? So when you're saying you're not selling it to foreigners, you're selling it to Grenadians, are you speaking about bona fide neighbor string Grenadians? Or are you speaking of the Grenadians who carry our passport and can speak English?
So
these are the things that bother me.
The government did say that it is it will be divesting the shares. Cassandra, I want you to comment on that. Whether you have any concern there, whether money talks and something else walks. Money talks, that walks. I want you to think about that to come back. But let me ask Mr. Hood. Mr. Hood, we have been pointed in the direction of a statement made by a senior official during a PURC meeting that there are 4 Chinese companies that are interested in the GRENLEC shares. Can you substantiate that? You ever heard about that statement? Because I was assured that it was made at a PURC meeting.
Odette, let me tell you this. Months ago, right after the ICSID judgment, I wrote an article and I said the Chinese will provide the money. How did I know that? 1 and 1 is equal to 2. That's what I'll say on that. And I happen to know that a Chinese company is actually in play. I wouldn't say anything on that one. But Odette, can I quickly make a point here? Very quickly. A few seconds.
Remember, I want to go back to Cassandra, right? But go ahead.
Do you know, just give me half a minute.
Half an hour?
Do you know? Half a minute. Do you know, and I want Grenadians to know, that this ICSID arbitration cost the taxpayers $33 million. Now, our government is playing games with us. They are telling us $63 million, but our budget is not in US dollars. They should tell us it's $170 million. And legal costs, and I'm repeating, legal costs of this arbitration was over $33 million. Wasted costs. When they could have paid for the 61.4% shares just $79 million. So it means they could have used the legal costs that they are paying for the ICSID. Half of that legal cost would have covered half of the $61.4 million. And that's a fact, Odette. And the fact is that also they have not told us about the legal costs. The $63 million US dollars, the 170 million EC dollars is only for shares. It is not for costs. And they have not told us about interest. because there is an award of pre-judgment interest and post-judgment interest. They have not said to us whether or not the interest was waived. They have not told us what they have paid in costs. There is an order for over $12 million in legal costs to the attorneys for the government and the attorneys for WRB. They are not going to tell you that, but I am telling the people of Grenada that this government has cost you over 33 million of your hard-paying taxpayers' money and giving it for legal fees. Because they could have taken advice and not gone to ICSID. They could have bumped up $9 per share to say $7 per share, and GRENLEC would have accepted it. At that rate, we'd have paid about $70 million for the $61.4 million. Yes.
Okay, so I believe it's unfortunate that the PowerPoint presentation got screwed, but the very first slide, at some point, if we could just take a sneak peek back at it, pivot back, because that one slide was saved. The producer is telling me that something went wrong. I think it was my error in saving the file. But I have the cost there. But Cassandra, let's go back to Cassandra first. That's the tribunal award. Let's go back to Cassandra first, Mr. Producer. I really want her to weigh in on this whole issue of their concerns about into whose hands GRENLEC will fall. There's a technicality. Mr. Roberts is alluding to bona fide Grenadians, but whether by passport or by birth, once you're a Grenadian, no, you're a Grenadian. Cassandra, your thoughts there?
All concerns are similar to that Mr. Roberts highlighted. We haven't seen any legislation or policy framework that would outline how these shares are going to be divested back to the ordinary Grenadian, given that so much was spent to, but I don't want to use the term to repurchase the shares, because it was actually a judgment, a court judgment, but now that they have the shares in their possession and they pay quite a significant amount for it, and I know that the Prime Minister and his representatives are willing to making profit and ensuring that government does not lose on that divestment of shares. So how are you going to do that and make those shares affordable to the average Grenadian? That's our biggest concern. I want to just correct Mr. Robert Tay. Cabinet is not government, and I've been saying this for months. Parliament, Her Majesty, and Parliament, the upper and lower houses, is what comprises of government. So when you keep saying that Cabinet has the responsibility of managing the board of directors of GRENLEC, that should not be. That may be, but it shouldn't be. If it's the people's asset, it should be managed by Parliament, and Parliament is the lower house, the upper house, and Her Majesty's representative.
We have de facto and de jure. One is law and one is fact.
No,
the facts are that Cabinet will be running it. The fact is that, Cassandra, Mr. Roberts is correct, because the Cabinet forms deals with the executive branch. Yes, so effectively, it is the Cabinet, the ministers that will run these things. They will exercise the executive authority of the government, if you're with me. The Parliament.
Yes, but remember, Mr. Hood, you and I always have this discussion.
No.
Section 63 of the Constitution says that Her Majesty shall be fully informed.
No, Cassandra, no, I'm not going there. I'm saying the government is composed of three parts. We don't go into that part. There is the lawmaking part, which is Parliament. Yes. There is the executive part. That's a part of government that actually governs and rules and. Okay, it is literally Cabinet that runs like MNIB and these people. There is a minister who gives directions to MNIB. And Mr. Roberts
so can I blow the referee's whistle? Can I blow the referee's whistle? Constitutionality point at some other point. I'm blowing the referee's whistle because we only have 10 minutes remaining. So there's somebody here who is passionate on the subject matter. But I have been also getting some queries as to whether we're taking calls. It's 10 minutes to the other. I don't know how I don't know how we're doing this tonight. But we might be able to take 2 quick calls. 440-1252 is the number. 440-1252. But Mr. Hood, in the interim, somebody saying WRB was demanding that the government give them lands or sell lands at concessional rates for renewable programs. The fact is that WRB has shares in the Caterpillar company that manufactures engines that are used in GRENLEC and did not have the appetite for renewable energy. They were only paying lip service to renewable energy. The new Electricity Act opened up the generation of electricity and removed the monopoly that GRENLEC had. WRB opted out because they were not prepared to operate in an open market. They were comfortable with having a monopoly. Let me ask you to hold your point there, because we'd like to accommodate a caller who's on the line. Caller, good evening, and we have to make it kind of brief tonight. It's already 10 minutes to 10 o'clock. Hello?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to discount both Kaji and Roberts because apart from the political and personal interests involved, I believe that day. Ms. Mitchell, I think that you are on the right track in terms of the numbers. And while I admire enthusiasm, I think that there are issues here, or broader issues that we need to consider. One of the things coming out of this GRENLEC issue, and it so happens that I was on the board of GRENLEC for a while and was in the midst of this confrontation between the NNP administration and WRB. And one of the issues that come out here is the question of national sovereignty. Regrettably, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we have seen the same issue about sovereignty, the question of a nation being able to do as its national parliament or governments want, has come up again in relation to the Sanders COVID issue. Who in charge? Right? Can Sanders do what they want with us? And it was a similar situation, as Mr. Hood will tell you, with the WRB. Unfortunately, it is my view that both sides have committed, well, let me not say crimes, but both sides have committed some serious errors in that GRENLEC matter. And I speak now as a shareholder of GRENLEC. We have to bear in mind that GRENLEC is operating under not only the ESA, going back to the 2 ESAs and the amendment thereto, but GRENLEC is also operating under the company's law. And it leaves the question as to what we shareholders want. And the government has, in fact, in my view, abused its position as a significant shareholder in depriving minority shareholders of interest in the say of how GRENLEC is being run. And the question of their sincerity and integrity going forward would be determined by what management and board structure goes into place in relation to the future of GRENLEC. I know you're running out of time, so I would leave it at that.
Caller, if you don't mind me interjecting and asking you a question, please. What level of confidence you have that the divestment process will involve Grenadian businesses and not just sold off to somebody with a huge coffer? Hello?
Sorry, repeat that.
Yes, I was asking you, you said that you're a shareholder, so I'm asking about your confidence levels about the divestment process and how it might be handled. Do you think, for instance, this would end up in the hands of the Chinese, as people have been touting?
If Chinese are citizens and they are entitled to buy shares in Grenada, it could end up in Chinese hands. But that is no different from Huggins or Brighton and Miners or Huggins or Republic Bank, which is in fact what has happened with NCB. That is the philosophical issue that you now have to deal with, the question of state control versus private control. But that decision in respect to GRENLEC was made for us 25 years ago by Brother Roberts and Company.
Great, thanks. Mr. Roberts, you want to respond to that?
Well, Odette, I don't know what aspect to respond to, because what he's saying is exactly what we are saying. the National Democratic Congress holds no brief for WRB. What we are interested in is what is best for the people of Grenada. If spending 33 million or whatever it is on legal fees is considered to be best for Grenadians, some Grenadians may like it. We don't think that was the best approach. We think a harmonious discussion, negotiation to remove some of the clauses, either think that sort of renewables would be the thing. The National Democratic Congress did it that way. We agreed to 20% renewables by 2020. There's an energy policy which was financed by the OAS. It is online. It was negotiated. And we think negotiation is better than bullying any day. But we hold no brief for WRB. We are looking at what is in the best interest of Grenadians. And we don't think Mr. Gregory Bowen, according to the reports of the Worrell Commission, is someone who is credible enough to run GRENLEC. And this is the point that we are making.
All right, Mr. Hood,
go ahead, Mr. Hood, go ahead. Reference to me in terms of having some interest to protect. And I actually call I have no interest to protect. The reality is that there was a negotiation in process between WRB and the government of Grenada, sponsored by the US government. And the objectives of the negotiation, which the government needs to tell the people, was two things: to move to renewables and to lower the cost of electricity. Those were the targeted aims. And that same agreement was abrogated, interrupted very rudely by Minister Bowen when the second half of the negotiation moved to Grenada. And that is a fact. So to say that WRB was not interested in renewables, that's not the truth. The negotiation came to the point where there was a commitment by WRB GRENLEC to move to a certain amount of renewables, as Brother Robert is saying. So it was a phased approach that both parties agreed to in Washington to try to drive down the cost of electricity and to move to renewables. And the US government was backing it, because they did not want the US company to suffer loss, and they didn't want to take any side. So they decided, let the two parties talk it over. And there was a plan going forward, which was interrupted rudely.
But Mr. Roberts, let me just go back quickly to Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, so is here, and we have not seen a 20% renewable. So can we deem that to be a failure on the part of WRB? And probably serve as justification for the government's decision?
As Kaji said, the government failed to cooperate in achieving these things. The government did not show any inclination, any drive, any interest in seeing renewables being implemented. They paid lip service. This is why when the State Department sent someone, they had to withdraw the Grenada had. This government had no interest. It is a dishonest set of people paying lip service and trying to fool the Grenadian people with spin. The facts speak for themselves. This is the beginning. And the National Democratic Congress is saying that one of the first things they must do is enact freedom of information legislation. Hiding information, performing in the dark of night, obscure as ever. We're calling for transparency. And we're going to give the Grenadian people a Freedom of Information Act.
All right, so you have just made a plug there on behalf of the National Democratic Congress. The GBN will send you an invoice tomorrow for that ad. Let's wrap it up tonight, gentlemen.
Very well, I agree with you. If you don't want to play, we're going to sue.
Campbell, I think that there was a question that you posed earlier about the issue with Caterpillar and the equipment with GRENLEC.
It was actually a comment made by someone. So,
yeah, we
all right, you're on the double. So you want me to read that again? Mr. Hood, you wanted to go back to it? So let's see. WRB was demanding that government give them lands to sell lands at concessional rates for renewable programs. The fact is that WRB has shares in the Caterpillar company that manufactures the engines that are used in GRENLEC and did not have the appetite for renewable energy. they were only paying lip service to renewable energy. The new Electricity Act opened up the generation of electricity and removed the monopoly that GRENLEC had. WRB opted out because they were not prepared to operate in an open market. They were comfortable with having a monopoly.
But let's just talk, because if I am just paying lip service, so call my shots now. Why not say to GRENLEC, okay, let's cooperate. Let's see what's going on and see what decision to make. Why not?
And if I may add to that, Ms. Campbell, the tribunal found that the government did not provide enough evidence to establish any conflict of interest. When they looked at the minutes provided by the board of directors of GRENLEC, it showed the deliberations between Caterpillar and GRENLEC. It also showed that the company had accepted responsibility for whatever problems that the equipment had, and they had even given GRENLEC a credit to replace one of the equipment. So the government, the argument, they had no basis for the argument, and based on the evidence provided in Exceed, the tribunal found that there was no conflict of interest in that matter.
There was no merit in the argument.
Yeah. Surely, and that's why I regret. That's why I regret.
Sovereignty is governed by your parliament, the exercise of sovereignty. So if parliament passes a law, then don't come and tell me anything about exercise of sovereignty. There is a law in place that governs the governed as well as those who put themselves in governing position. So if Parliament passes a law, you have to respect the law.
So, Mr. Hood, as we wrap it up this evening, do you think Minister Bowen is licking his choppers this evening because he's saying, well, I have wrestled this for 26 years and I have won? Think he's a happy man?
It is a hollow victory, because there's a huge cost to pay.
But it's not coming out of his pocket.
This government will still have to account to the people for the expenditure. They have not done it as yet. So I don't see how it could be a victory.
The government told that it shifted money around, The government has accounted. The government has said, this is how we found the money. We've shifted money around. So they have accounted, haven't they?
No, they can't shift money around. It's contrary to the Constitution. If they want to shift money around, as they've done all the time, they have to pass a supplementary appropriation act to discuss in Parliament where they're getting the money from. So Vincent is correct. You have to come to Parliament to change any appropriation act.
But the government said
when the Prime Minister decides to shuffle cabinet,
they have parliamentary approval for the money. What they have done is place their priorities in different places. What's wrong with that?
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Says who?
Every time, let me tell you this: when the Prime Minister shifts around ministries, they have to go back to Parliament to discuss where the money is going from and how they're shifting it around. That's a fact. Go back and look in 2017 and 2018. They passed an appropriation act in December. And when the Prime Minister decided to shuffle around ministries and move ministries about, they had to go back to Parliament with that supplementary act to approve it, even though Parliament had passed the same amount of money. Go back and check it out. It's in the laws of Grenada. Go back and look in 2017 about the Appropriation Act, and go back and look in 2018 about the Supplementary Act. And you're going to see the same amount was passed. The totals in the capital and recurrent were passed, but they had to go back to Parliament in 2018 just to simply move around the ministries. You can't do it.
All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. There are myriad issues that we would have liked to touch on this evening in terms of some of the questions and submissions that have been made by our listeners and viewers that we have not been able to entertain because of time. It always runs out. They say about time when you're having a good time. But nonetheless, it looks as if we may have to do another episode of this. We're hoping that the government at some point will agree to be represented, to make it clear to those of you who joined us late that we had invited the government of Grenada. They declined the invitation. So, Mr. Roberts, what are your closing comments this evening as we wrap it up?
The deal is a done deal. Now we have to make sure that the interests of the Grenadian people, the workers at GRENLEC, are best taken care of. We look forward to the divestment policy the policy framework to make sure that Grenadians really benefit. We also want to see a quick move so that Cabinet will not be saying how the money will be spent and all of that. So it's truth, honesty, openness, and transparency. That's all we're asking for.
Mr. Hood, you are wrapping up by saying what this evening?
The government will never come on a public forum to discuss GRENLEC matter. They will never come. I challenge them to come.
Cassandra, what are your closing thoughts this evening?
While this was a very interesting and enlightening discussion, leaving this platform, I think there are still many questions that are left unanswered. I'm going to join with Mr. Roberts and beg for transparency and accountability in this matter so that we don't have to make assumptions on what has transpired. This is the people's business. This is our asset, and we need to know, we deserve to know how the people to manage those assets and our resources, how they are doing it. You have to report to us. There's no question about that. So thank you for this opportunity, and I want to take this opportunity, I didn't earlier, to express my condolences to the family from St. Andrew who lost their relative. I want to call on my fellow Grenadians to be sensitive. I know that he is always going to be noted as our first COVID fatality, but at the same time, he is a father, a grandfather, a human being. And let us be empathetic in the time of grief. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and well said. And that's where we wrap it up this evening for tonight's edition of Beyond the Headlines. Our panelists this evening, Ms. Cassandra Mitchell, she's a civil society activist. Mr. Cajeton Hood, he's an attorney at law, former Attorney General of Grenada. And Mr. Vincent Roberts, he's a former executive member of the National Democratic Congress, the NDC. And as a footnote, we'd like to say, as we've said through this program, that we had invited the government of Grenada to be represented on the panel, but they declined the invitation. It's been some kind of high-temperature days in the news this past couple of weeks. Let's see what transpires next week, please the Lord. And we will keep you posted. Beyond the Headlines will be here to take you exactly there, beyond the headlines, because in the news we can only probably give you a 3-minute soundbite on some of the matters. Beyond the Headlines delves into these matters deeply. We look forward to continuing sharing information with you throughout 2021 as God gives us life, He gives us light, and He gives us His grace, gives us the strength. We'll see you again next week. So long for now. I'm Odette Campbell. Thanks to our panelists one more time.